Hello, folks, and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to have you. Thank you so much for joining. I'm very grateful. For those of you who have not seen the show before, really it's motivated by my belief that we live in a beautiful world, albeit with some pockmarks. And what I would like to do throughout my podcast is to really highlight individuals who have done extremely well for themselves and been very successful in various different ways, and to inspire you through that. Because we have the potential to make this world really the gem that it could be. And what I would like you to take out of this discussion I'm having today with a wonderful human being is the zone that this man found himself in, the purpose and meaning that he discovered in his life, and how you can do that too. So before we get going, I do want to point out to you something very interesting. You have the ability, if you like, to sponsor or advertise on the show. I'll leave this up there for a second. I'm going to be putting it on future shows as well. And you can do that through sponsoring an entire month of either this podcast or Parsha and Prose with Rabbi Gemara, or really just a shout out to individuals, get better soon, or in Jewish, as they say, a refuah shalema, mazel tov, or, if you have something that just a general message or wish that you'd like to send out, you have the ability to do that. Give me a call or email me at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com, and I'd be more than happy to help you figure this out. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is Gershon Miskin, otherwise known as Gary, a lovely human being, and I'm just so happy to have him here with me. How are you, Gary?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Let me just tell you a little bit about Gershon. I'll probably go back and forth throughout the show from Gershon to Gary because I haven't decided yet what I want to call him. But in a nutshell, Gershon is an individual who comes from a Jewish home, from a religious background. He is the father of 7, was once a redhead, was 6'7". He's a very big man. But really, the essence of what we are going to discuss today is an evolution that he went on. It's a change that he discovered in his world, in his life, that brought him to a point today, which is very much full of Zen, happiness and satisfaction. He went from a place of being a very religious Jew, of which he still is, but concentrating more so on nouveau ideas of spirituality, such as meditation, such as mindfulness, such as past regressions. And the conversation's an amazing one. I'm sure we've already had it offline, and I'm looking forward to it. So, Gary, once again, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for doing this.
Let's go. What do you want to know?
I understand that your sense of spirituality, your sense of God, if you will, and we can define that later on, was something that you carried with you as a little boy. You told a story, I think when you were 10 years old, that you had lost your bite plate, right? And you were scared, as we all were, of our moms or our dads or both, if we were really unlucky. And I think you started to say a prayer or start to sing a song for God to intervene. Do you remember the spirituality of your younger days?
It came very natural. There was a song that they played in kindergarten. Please Hashem, please help me now. And I remember falling on my knees, knowing what was waiting for me at home if I didn't have the bite plate. And I had a natural instinct, a reflex to call to the higher power to save my skin. I got a thrashing anyway, so I mean, it was the reflex is what's important. I don't know how well it worked for me at that particular time, but yeah.
Did you literally get a potch, a smack?
I don't remember. It
Like,
would have
do your
been
parents do that?
it would have been like more than 40 years ago. But I can't imagine my mother was too pleased.
Yeah, I know. I've gone through that too, as a youngster. Do you remember what your understanding of God was at that time?
Yeah, more of a separate entity, an all-powerful being that I could communicate with, or that something outside of myself.
Yeah, can you take that a little bit further? Would that be in sync with the traditional Orthodox community that you come from?
I think so. I mean, I think that most people, most God-fearing people, are viewing God as a being, an all-powerful, infinite being that is watching, is judging, is rewarding for good behavior, is punishing for bad behavior, has a lot of human characteristics, and I that's how things started for me, and a good chunk of my adult life. I'd say about 15 years ago, I began, I guess, evolving. First, viewing God as a separate being, but instead of being the boss or being the master, being a father, or being like someone loving. So I put a more um, comfortable, loving spin on the same idea. That kind of led me into meditation. That at that point, that's when I went from talking to God, the other being, to going inward. Instead of consciously having a conversation, I would quiet my mind. I was falling asleep in the beginning there, but my practice was refined, and it evolved to the point where I could get into a nice, relaxed, kind of in between state. And once you spend time in that state, and most people know exactly what that is. It's before losing consciousness as you're falling asleep at night, or before you start your day. You're in your bed, you're awake, but you're not. In that in between state, if you spend enough time in that in between state, you start making certain realizations. Certain things kind of hit you. Certain realizations kind of hit you, and you realize, what, there's divinity here. I mean, I feel something. I feel a connection. I feel something loving. But it's inward, and it's not directed externally. And then
Oh,
over a period of time, you start making the realization that what you're feeling is you. It's the real you, and it's divine. So God becomes less of an external thing and more of a realization that God resides within, because you can feel it, not because something, someone explained to you something, or you read it in a book. It's not a intellectual idea. It's a knowing. It's a feeling. It's a remembering of something that's hardwired in there. So
before we go further down that road, I just want to take a step back because I think it's important. And I want to lead into that with just a very short story. I was at a restaurant. Excuse me. I used to do a restaurant and food show on the radio and TV. And I was at a restaurant and I met Yo-Yo Ma, world-class celloist. And I started to talk to him and I asked him, I said, tell me, Yo-Yo, when is the best time to play a concert? And he said, the best time to play a concert is when you're falling asleep, when you're half awake and half asleep. He said, because then your walls come down and then the true music comes out, sort of in sync with what you're saying. But just to give a little bit, roll out the carpet here a little bit more to have a better understanding of your evolution, of how you changed and why. You said that you were married. You've been married twice. This is your second time around, and thank God it's going beautifully over the last many years. First time wasn't so great, and you got divorced. And you said your fallback was religion, was spirituality, and that you started to study and you started to ensconce yourself in learning. And I understand that because I've been in that place before. And you went to Israel and you approached the rabbi there and you said to him, listen, I'm really trying to figure life out. I have some very deep questions that are troubling me. And he, who was a Talmud Chacham, a real scholar, said, well, you need to learn more. And that wasn't enough for you, right?
that's a good synopsis of what happened. Yes.
Why wasn't that enough? Why wasn't learning more enough for you?
I mean, look, you got to be honest with yourself. Do you feel it? Do you feel it's something or not? I spent significant time learning Talmud and going deep in it. And I did it. I approached it as an adult, not because I had to, because I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I got a tremendous amount of satisfaction from it. I mean, it was very, it was very stimulating. It was very, it's a good boost to the ego when you can understand something or push someone around in an idea and prevail. Someone older than you, someone more seasoned than you. It's like a real victory. But that's like an egoic type of a thrill. And I wanted to connect with God. I wanted to feel something that I wasn't feeling. And it's a natural yearning that I had, and I think a lot of people have it. And if you're being honest with yourself and you're learning and you're going through the typical motions of what Orthodox Judaism prescribes to get close to God, you have a choice. Either you can be honest with yourself. If you're not feeling it, you could say so, or you could be of the mind that yes, something is happening. I may not feel it. I'm not supposed to feel it, maybe, but somewhere in heaven, somewhere in a different dimension, my bank account is growing over there because of my efforts, and I got to keep this up because it's the right thing to do because I was told that it's the right thing to do. So that wasn't enough. The fact that I was told that was the right thing to do was not enough for me. I needed to feel it, and I had to keep going forward. So that's what I did.
I'm very curious about the aspect of your story which reflects, I think, what you would loosely call courage and bravery. In other words, the ability to dive right in and say, hey, listen, what I've been taught isn't entirely working for me. And your suggestion to other people is if you really, really want to come to your true spiritual self, then you have to be brave enough to challenge those a priori, those things that we were brought up on. There is a God. God gave us the Torah. This is how it works, and this is how you have to follow it. Are you a courageous person in general, or did you have to sort of figure this out?
I've been known to take the occasional risk. So I mean, fear is a killer. Fear keeps you in prison. It keeps you in a box, you're not going to grow spiritually unless you can eliminate fear. So I moved forward spiritually. So I guess I conquered whatever fear was there. There was some fear there. When I made my realizations, a lot of the work had to be about kind of reconciling it with Judaism, with everything that I had been taught and programmed with, and that's I can understand why that would be fearful. I mean, you have a big investment in a certain way of life and a certain and your identity. And then if you're going to call that into question and you're going to open up cans of worms, that could be problematic.
Yes.
And people are scared. And people are scared of that. And it makes sense why they would be, especially if you are married, if you have kids. If you're going to go off in some sort of a spiritual path that's not not like your wife or your kids, and you find something that they don't understand, you're setting yourself up for a difficult situation.
Were you afraid of that? Were you afraid of that?
Not really. For whatever reason, not really. My wife, God bless her, we have a good relationship. She, there's a lot of mutual respect there. I think she trusts me. She's been with me long enough to know that that the spiritual work that I do is ultimately beneficial for me. It's beneficial for our family. And luckily, I don't have that problem. I have an open, smart, spiritually, she's intuitive that way. She's open, and I don't have that problem. But I can imagine there would be a lot of guys that would.
Yeah, I've seen that. In fact, I had that problem because my father was an Orthodox rabbi, and I left Orthodoxy, and it wasn't pleasant. He passed away in 1989 at 61 years old, and by the end of his life, he and I had not much of a relationship to speak of because of the differences in philosophies. What about your mom and dad? Is it a correct argument to make that having the courage to really, really look at fundamentals that you were brought up on and make some very, very big changes and subtle changes Was your household growing up a place where you were challenged, where you were told to take risks, where you said, you know what, be brave, be courageous, and find out what's right for you? Was that at all within your household?
Um, my grandmother always used to tell me, my mother's mothers, you could be whatever it is that you want to be. Um, I didn't understand what she was talking about, but she said it enough times. I think it may be rubbed off a little bit. I mean, the to answer your question, not really. It wasn't a theme. It wasn't a central theme, but I think I got enough of it. I picked up enough of it that it wasn't. If I had to take risks, I had believed in myself enough that it wasn't. There wasn't a lack of confidence.
You know what I was told once by an individual who worked very closely with children, especially homeless children and or kids who come from extreme poverty. And I asked them, I said, how is it that some of them grow up to actually be very influential, to be very successful? He said, what happens in life is if somebody comes along, it could be a teacher, Gary, it could be a parent, and they see something to you about who you are, something of a positive nature. Hey, you know what, man? You're a great writer. You're a really good poet. You have a wonderful mind for numbers. That sticks with kids, and they start to see themselves in a more positive light. Was there someone in your background, in your history, that you can think of who helped you form or shape your narrative?
I mean, lots. I mean, during the years, the teachers, friends, parents. Like my father was a high integrity guy
Mhm.
and very very honest, and anything that was cheating or dishonest was it was very very clear where he stood, like morally impeccable, and that rubbed off. Um, I've had some people. There's been people with spiritual talent, like real spiritual talent, like psychic type talent, that I spent enough time with to know that it was legitimate. Part of my spiritual path was coming or having contact, having an open mind first, but coming in contact with people that could demonstrate really amazing things,
Yes.
things that skeptics wouldn't accept, but I accepted, and it broadened me. And I could think of, I was humming along in my 30s with a certain type of worldview, um, and and this coincided more or less in the time when I started my spiritual, or was beginning or moving through my spiritual journey. This individual had psychic ability and told me things about the world that at the time seemed a little bit crazy, but we've all been witnessing over the past, I don't know, 15 years or whatever it is, how things have evolved, and things that you thought were impossible are becoming, the craziness is being revealed daily. And I got an early notice to that. I became a conspiracy theorist almost back then, by most standards, because of this information that I was getting, and people thought I was absolutely nuts, and they don't think I'm as nuts anymore. Conspiracy theorists have been vindicated in a big way. So that early understanding, and the help broadening my mind and getting out of like the mainstream, the way that the sheeple, I don't know if that's a good term, but the way the sheeple would look at things and kind of have an independent, different type of view, that was brought about by individuals, that helped me along my path.
Yeah, there's a great saying in Perkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, which is Ezehu Chacham, who is a wise person, Lamed Mikol Adam, somebody who learns from everybody. And I get the distinct feeling that your mind is open to learning from all different types of folks, but not only from people, but from books and documentation as well. You tell a great story about at the time where you were in Jerusalem. Somebody handed you a book. I guess people really knew that you were thirsty for knowledge and thirsty for spiritual, on a quest to understand God more so. And somebody handed you a book about these children, who had some challenges in terms of what we might call a normal range of understanding or education. And this fellow wrote a book on how these kids did not have certain filters that we would have, as an example, separating us from the spiritual, the divine. Do you want to talk about that book a little bit, because it clearly had a big influence on you?
The name of that book was Secrets of the Soul, and it was about kids in Israel that where they had this technology where they'd be able to communicate with kids that were, had serious, developmental problems. And you wouldn't be able to communicate. They weren't speaking in regular sentences, and knowing what they were thinking became possible because of something called, I think, facilitated communication. There was using computers and a wand and whatever else, and there was transcripts of conversations between the therapists and these kids. And these kids were saying things very profound, things they couldn't possibly know, spiritual concepts that were really, really deep, things that are going on the other side of the curtain. And so this book was transcripts of that. And when I read it, you're right. It made a big impact. It's to the degree that you believe that the other side of the curtain is real and engage with it, the more it shows itself, and the more it helps you expand, or the more you expand into it. And that book was a good one. I also we're talking about influences. I never met her, but there was a woman, Dolores Cannon, who passed away a few years ago, she was like the mother of past life regression. And she spent 50 years and tens of thousands of subjects or patients. She would regress them in a deep state of hypnosis, and she would be able to talk to their high selves. The consciousness that existed before they took on form, the consciousness that exits after you, or that lives on after you pass. She had transcripts also of regressing patients, and she wrote, 15 or 20 books of these transcripts. This wasn't her idea. This was, or her ideas, or her research. I guess it was research. She was actually talking to the souls of these individuals who are plugged in, and asking them what happens on the other side, and why are we here, and getting profound answers, and then writing it down and putting this information in books. And so also a big factor in my spiritual development, understanding that it's real, understanding how it works. The elegance of it. There's like a simple elegance, though, that just makes a lot of sense with how this the information that's coming from these sources, these non-traditional sources, be it through kids that can't normally communicate, because they don't have regular brain function, or intellect, or people in a very, very deep state of trance that you're talking to their souls, you're talking to their essence. There's some fascinating stuff out there if you're willing to look.
Gary, I remember picking up a book myself many years ago. It was a softcover book, very old, on a shelf in a used bookstore. I think it was called Hello God, This is Anna. And it was about this little girl who was lost in the foggy streets of London. She was a little girl, 5 years old, and somebody was walking that night, going for a stroll, and started to talk to her, took her home, and she stayed with them. She had this brilliant mind, which somehow could connect the divinity to mathematical numbers. And the whole book was about how this little tiny little girl could do this with God somehow. It's a great book to read. I recommend it to people. But really what fascinated me was the fact that a book could have such a great impact on me, not only people, but things that you can, pull off the bookshelf and be influenced by, which is clearly in your case, that's what happened. It wasn't just people, but you did a lot of reading, right?
I actually didn't do as much reading as you'd think. It's not how many books you read, it's reading the right ones. Early in the game of my development, like right at the beginning, I was starting to meditate, and I remember having a conversation with God. This wasn't inner work. This was more of outer work. Talking up, And I basically said, you know something, I don't know what's going on. I know that, you know, the story that everyone believes is not right. There's wrong. There's just something doesn't add up. Something doesn't make sense. And it wasn't just religion or spirituality. It was the news. What was going on? Like we're sensitive to the whole Israel news cycle. And I remember that back then there was the second Intifada, or I remember exactly. I think there was Ariel Sharon took a walk on the Temple Mount, and all hell broke loose. And I knew how it was being reported in the mainstream, and I knew what the truth was because I was close to it. And you know, most people reading the mainstream don't have the context or the background in order to really know what's going on. And I knew that there was spin, and I knew it wasn't true, and I couldn't trust the news. I was a stockbroker at the time, and I was listening to what they were saying on CNBC to, like, you know, to get people excited, to pump stocks, to pump ideas. And like, I knew that, you know, so dishonesty everywhere, and things don't add up and they don't make sense. So I'm having this conversation with God. And I said, could you please, I need to know the truth. Bring me to the truth. I was very emphatic that I needed to know, and I wasn't happy with the status quo, my status quo understanding. And I asked, and from that time of asking, and I remember this over, I don't know, 15-year period of time, longer, 17 years, I don't remember exactly, but the, like breadcrumbs, like a trail, like you're following in the woods. You meet this person, you pick up this book, you're put in this situation, you know, you witness this, you have this meditative experience which blows your mind. It's like everything at the right time, everything in the appropriate pace, in the you know, when you need that, when you're ready for the book, you'll get it. When you're ready to have that conversation, you'll have it. And it's sort of like it's being led. But you have to, in my experience, you have to ask. And you have to say, you know, put it out there, because, you know, we have free will down here. Unless you're asking and you make up your mind that this is exactly what you want, that doesn't just happen. But once you set the things in motion, you'll find the books, you'll find the inspiration, you'll find, you know, what you need to get you there, because, you know, they lead you there.
You told me in our pre-interview discussion that through all the Torah learning that you had done, it was extensive, that the thing that confused you or that you wondered about was how it was that so many of our colleagues, contemporaries, would study Torah, but it didn't really seem like it was changing them from within, right? You have sort of like the without God, the God outside of you, and then evolving into the personal, into the depth inside of you, an understanding of God within you. Tell us about that. Tell us about how classic studying of Torah was not enough for you, and how you changed that and evolved into another place.
I was either excited and interesting about learning or not. When I was not, I was doing it because out of obligation. At a certain point, I started doing it out of desire, and it served its purpose, and it got me, you know, to it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I don't regret
Yeah.
the time spent. You know, but that being said, you know, people change and people evolve. People desire more. You know, back in those days, I desired to go to Israel and to spend a week, you know, learning in a group at a high level, you know, loving every minute of it. That was the desire.
Yes.
The desire shifts. You know, some people live their lives like the exact same thing day after day, year after year, and that's not me. Like, I've been evolving. You know, I evolve, and it evolved into a different need. And you know, the what I found with the learning was, you know, one realization that I made when I was in Israel learning with guys at a high level, was that there are guys here that are 30 years advanced, they've been learning since they're young, and they know a tremendous amount, and I will never get to this level. Like, there's just isn't enough hours in the day. I'm not going to get there.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at them, and they're nice people. At the end of the day, they're good folks. but they haven't evolved. They still operate very much from fear. They haven't worked out the fear. They worry about things, like they're very human. And if my thought was at the time, and I think this is what really pushed me, to explore other things or different avenues, was that these are the top guys learning at the highest level, and in ways that I'm not going to be able to hit, and they have not perfected themselves, and they're not. I wouldn't call them godly. I wouldn't call them high vibratory beings. They get angry, they get upset, very human, but great intellects and very serious about it and very God fearing, but not evolved. And if they're doing it in a way that I can never do it, and they haven't hit that point yet, maybe this isn't where you want to put all your energy. And kind of led me and I had success in doing it in another way, and much faster. I tell you one thing: when I went to yeshiva, in my earlier years, if they would have taught me these techniques, Lord knows where I'd be.
Yes.
If I was doing this, instead of doing this for 10 or 15 years, if I was doing this for 35 or 40 years, it would have been great. It would have been great. But again, no regrets. And I think it serves it's important. Look, there's steps. There's steps in evolution and spiritual evolution. And I think religion and orthodoxy and this is a very important, necessary step. It was for me. I'm not where I am spiritually now without that. I think a lot of people have fear moving beyond it, and they're stuck in that. But if I had to choose that or not, I would take that. So it serves its purpose well for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting to me is that you've gone into this whole different body of water, if you will, spiritual ocean, but yet you haven't let the last one go. In other words, you're still a religious Jew. You still attend synagogue all the time. You're raising your kids in that context, but you've added some really, really very cool stuff and important tools, one of which is meditation. And I want to talk about that for a few minutes. What was the path that you took to start to understand meditation, which can be very hard for many people, to the extent that nowadays I ask you, Gary, how much do you meditate? You said sometimes I meditate for 10 minutes and sometimes I can meditate for 2 hours, which is an arduous thing to do. So tell us about your
2 hours, maybe say an hour and a half. 2 hours would be
fine.
I don't know.
An hour and a half.
That's a long one.
How did you get into meditation? Not easy for everybody.
That conversation that I had that I was telling you about before, where I asked for the truth, and you get the right books, and you get we're all different. We're all going to respond to different stuff. There isn't one size fits all. There isn't one way of meditating. If you ask, your higher self or the part of you which is God, if you ask for enlightenment, your path is going to be different than the next guy's, but you're going to get what you need when you need it. And so that's what happened to me. I found the right book about meditating, something that resonated with me. I think it was called the Master Key System, and it was 24 chapters over 24 weeks. You did a chapter a week. There was an exercise there, and the ability. I'm naturally an ADD type. I don't sit still too well, and so it's counterintuitive for me to just sit there. And the Master Key System was very good at helping me push through that, and that kind of launched me. And over the years, it's changed. My practice has changed. You pick up a little here, you pick up a little there. I took a TM course, Transcendental Meditation.
Right.
Every major city has one. I like some stuff from there. I've got the assorted, the YouTube video, or things that I've seen online, and you cobble together things. I remember there's something called remote viewing, which the military developed it. It's a protocol to, train people to go into deeper states of consciousness and be able to, collect intelligence gathering. They made a movie about it called Men Who Stare at Goats. But I took that course as much of it as I could handle. It's a different story. I didn't complete that one, but I had a lot of the meditative stuff I learned from, listening to those tapes, which were developed by the U.S. military. So a hodgepodge, to answer your question, but all brought on by saying, this is what I want and bring it to me. And that's the stuff that I found resonated with me, because I guess my higher self is, knows me better than I know myself, and chose the proper media that would resonate with me. So I would tell anyone who's interested in doing this and moving along, start by having that conversation before you go running to the library, to pick up a whole bunch of books. Let your higher self, customize a reading list for you, or customize a program. And it will, if you just trust it. You surrender into it, you let it happen, and you'll find it. That's my experience.
The Dalai Lama's written a book on meditation called The Heart of Meditation. Thich Nhat Hanh, very well known, I believe he's Vietnamese, similarly wrote a book called The Miracle of Mindfulness. You're right, there's a ton of stuff out there. Maybe these aren't the places to start, but it's all available. What I want to talk about for a few minutes is the mechanics of meditation. I've meditated myself. I wouldn't consider myself really great at it, but it has made a difference in my life. The other day, before I did a podcast, Gary, I meditated for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And once I was doing the interview, I felt like I was on fire. I felt like I was very present, very aware. My mind was clear. Talk to us a little bit as neophytes about the mechanics of going into a meditative state. How do you do it, and what happens when you're there?
I mean, we have our, they call it the monkey mind. It's the rational, your thinking mind is the dialogue in your head, and it has all the control. It's front and center, and it's a question about switching the gear in your brain to kind of put that on the shelf, kind of sideline it a little bit. When you're watching television, as an example, you're entrained on something that, where you don't have too much mental dialogue. You're in a state of alpha brainwave state, and you can, if you're late for a meeting and you're running for your keys, because you can't find your keys because you're all discombobulated in the head, so you're at a I think it's a beta brainwave. It's a more frazzled. It's a higher frequency brainwave. So what you really want to do is you want to lower the speed in which your brain is operating to a deeper state, like I was talking before about sleep. Right before sleep, before you lose consciousness. That's the theta state, the theta brainwave state. Delta is when you fall asleep. But you want to get in a meditative state to theta. And the way that you do that is by sidelining the conscious part, or the monkey mind part of the brain. And when you stop feeding it and letting it run amok, so what happens is you'll naturally start slipping down into that theta state. You want to be in that theta state without falling into delta, without falling asleep. So practically speaking, how do you do it? Sit in a chair, you close your eyes, no distractions, and you breathe, and you slow down your breath, and slow, deliberate breathing. And every time you're exhaling, you're getting more and more relaxed. And when your mind wanders, which it obviously will, you don't engage. You don't think about that thought. You just go back to the breath. You use the breath like a banister going down a flight of stairs. And every time you get off kilter, you'll hold on to the banister, breathe deep. And gradually what will happen is you'll find yourself in a deeper state. In the beginning, you'll probably fall asleep. And but with practice, you get to the point where it's consistency, it's practice. It's desire to want to do it. It's stating that you want to do it. It's making the time, consistent time. So I would do mine in the morning. I'd have a cup of coffee. I do the regular prayers, and then I would go grab a cup of coffee, and I would sit in the and relax for like 5 minutes, have my coffee, and then that's my spot. I got 45 minutes, I got an hour, and every single day, day after day after day, you need to have consistency, and it should be, I don't miss that morning coffee. So if I marry something in my schedule with the practice, so I'm going to maintain my practice. I'm going to stick with it. So that's what I did. That's how I hacked that. And then slow down the breath, which slows down the brain activity, which switches the gear, and consistency, and you maintain that. If you do that every day for a month, I don't think you're gonna stop. You're not gonna want to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty not simple, intuitive. It's not rocket science. You don't have to read too many books. Just basic practice. If you follow what I said, you should see some sort of result.
I know there's a mahlokus out there as to how you're breathing. There's an argument out there as to how your breathing should play out. Some people will argue that you breathe through your nose and then you exhale through your mouth. Other people just say breathe. Do whatever you're comfortable with, what your consciousness tells you to do. But from my understanding too, I guess point B of this is that meditation, in the simplest definition, is it's a focus on your breath, right? And some people, what they will do is, when they are going through that focus, in their mind's eye, they will consider love as an example, the love that they have inside of them for their children, and they'll allow that to expand within them as they breathe. Do you have a specific focus when you meditate?
It depends. It's every day could be different. If there's something, I can meditate for the purpose of just cleaning off and aligning. Mm-hmm. So if I'm feeling out of sorts and I just want to get right, so that's one meditation. That's one technique that I would do for that. If I'm looking for a certain type of an outcome, because I believe that all of us can, and we do, manifest our reality with what we think and what we believe. And if we put out a certain thought, a certain image, and we repeat that up and we enforce it with emotion, the chances of that coming about in time, is there's a good chance. At least that's been my experience. So sometimes I want to see a certain outcome. I'll put myself in that state and I'll visualize the end result of that outcome, how it feels. I want to visualize it. I'll project myself into that, and I'll feel it like it's actually happening. And I'll do that for 2-3 days, to make it as real as possible. And then I'll move on to something else. But depending on what it is that I want to do, sometimes I want to talk to somebody. So I want to talk to my higher self, or I want to maybe a relative who's no longer available. So I'll put myself, into a nice relaxed state. Which that's the start. That's table stakes. You got to get into theta. But once I'm in there, I'll pretend I'm sitting in a theater, and I'll ask the person that I want to talk to walk down the aisle, the center aisle. There'll be a spotlight on them. They'll walk up on the stage. There'll be a couple of chairs there with a microphone maybe, and I'll be sitting next to them up on the stage, and I'll ask a question. In my mind, I'll ask a question, and I'll try, and often I get an answer, and sometimes it could be an answer that I'm not expecting. Those are the best kinds. That's when you know that it's it's real, because if this isn't something that you would think of yourself, it's coming completely out of left field. Chances are you're connecting with something. So that could be a subject of another meditation. So there's all kinds of different fun stuff that you can do, but table stakes is you got to get into theta.
Gershon, when my sister wants to work something through, she will open up the book of Tehillim, Psalms, and she will pray. She will daven on the psukim, on the lines within that book. And if I were to ask her, what are you doing? What's the mechanics of it? She would say, I'm having a dialogue with God, right? Your explanation of meditation, how does that diverge? That to me is, I don't think, tell me if I'm wrong, that it's not a connection with that external God, as you qualified before. What is happening inside of you then?
If I understand the question, I've kind of internalized God. I see myself. I see God as me, the real me. and God is you, the real you. There's only one. There's only God, but He's got infinite facets, all individuated parts of Himself, and that's us. So I internalize that, and I try to feel as being the part of the divine that I am. I mean, your sister is she's kind of externalizing. She's externalizing. I'm sorry, the divinity, where I would internalize it. She's looking at it, outside of herself, and that's good. It's good to anytime you're talking to God, you have a relationship with God. You're God fearing. It's amazing.
Mhm.
The next level, to take it up a notch, to kick it up a notch, is to bring that God inside and to feel it inside and to realize, you know what? I've been saying that I have a soul my entire life. What does that mean practically? Is that like, it's mine, it's a soul. What is it? It's a piece of God. Really? Okay, well, and why don't I talk to my soul then? Talk to my individuated piece of God as a way in, as opposed to externalizing completely like your sister would. But it's the next level, and we're all destined to evolve into that higher consciousness of realizing that we all are God. God's within.
This is a really tough piece, right? Um, and it is because, per your definition, pretty much everything is God. Would that be correct?
Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. He's one. It's all one. Nothing exists outside of him or
Right,
it.
right. So, to be very dramatic about this whole thing, Hitler was a piece of God.
Absolutely.
How does that work?
But why is it so hard to believe?
Pretend it is.
This world that we're in is this physical world, this 3D world is just one little part. There's something much, much, much bigger on the other side. It's like a movie.
Yeah.
We're all acting in this movie, and we're creating the story as we go along. And if you want a really, really good movie, the movie of God, the movie of the existence, the physical existence of God, you have to have a really good villain. And you got to have a lot of scary parts, and you got to have a lot of, you got to be hanging on by your fingernails. And that's what human existence has been. It's been a serious, serious, serious soap opera. It's been a series with villains and tragedies and scary, scary things, but also amazing stuff, marching towards a redemption. It's going to be it's an amazing movie. And it has terrible, terrible villains, but that's what makes it compelling. It has to. But it's all the movie of God. It's all God. It's one.
Is God there to help you? The idea of prayer, that you reach out to God and you ask for assistance. This is going on in my life. God forbid someone's not well. Please, God, make this better. Make this person better. Or the prayers that religious people say in the morning, Rofei Chole Amo Yisrael, please, God, repair this person physically. Is that part of your day-to-day?
I talk to God all the time, but I'm talking to my higher self. I just made God 1 degree closer. I concentrated on a part of me which is God, as opposed to, again, external. And if you view God that way, I mean, the prayers are still relevant.
Yes.
I mean, the desire, the need to connect, and the power of it, it's the same. It's just you brought it 1 degree closer. It's the prayers are written, I think, on multiple levels, depending where you are. It's just like one size fits all. But you have some people at a certain level of spiritual development. You have others on a different level. So how do you have one prayer book or one set of rules for everybody? And the answer is you have a genius. You have a genius sitter or a genius Torah that regardless of where you are on your level of evolution, is relevant. It's like a Disney movie. You can go to a Disney movie with your kid; they'll be entertained because they see something that's funny for them, and the adult can be entertained because there's humor in there, there's something clever in there that's entertaining for them. It's one movie that has, it's multifaceted in that way, and its appeal. And if you're going to look at yourself as a piece of God and you're going to substitute, think of it that way in the prayers, there's enough relevance in the prayers. I believe. I think they were constructed that way. just like there's meanings in the Torah that if you view it through a spiritual lens, there's tremendous wisdom that can be unlocked, from that was embedded in there. If you're viewing it from a spiritual perspective, if you're viewing it from like a historical book, and there's all kinds of lessons and laws and rules and all kinds of stuff taken at face value, it's relevant at that level. But it's multifaceted, and it's one book that has that, regardless of where you are in your development, is relevant.
We alluded to past regression before. Now, this would require an entire podcast really to sink our teeth into, but suffice it to say, it refers to a technique where an individual is guided to mentally or emotionally revisiting previous events or stages in their life, often with the goal of exploring unresolved issues, trauma, or emotions that may still be influencing their present behavior or state of mind. Now, you have gone through that process of past regression, right?
Yeah, both giving and receiving.
And it just sort of a trite question, but do you have dozens and dozens of would it be correct saying souls or people whom you have been?
I mean, one soul. I mean,
Yeah.
tough to answer this, but I'll tell you one thing. I believe that I've had other lives. The
Yeah.
consciousness, which is Gershon Miskin, had other identities, other experiences, stretching back a long way.
And do you know what they are?
I mean, I've experienced some of them in my mind's eye while in, while put in that state. Yes.
Can you tell me about a couple of them?
I witnessed the Exodus from Egypt in one life.
Oh, did you?
I did. I was standing on a cliff looking down on a beach, seeing a bunch of, people that, kind of congregating there. And then in the distance, it looked like a cloud on the horizon. And then I realized it's the cavalry, and there's panic on the beach.
I love that.
And I kind of witnessed this. I witnessed what appeared to be like a whirlpool kind of opening up, but a whirlpool that was like, creating a tunnel, more of like a tunnel. And it was all very, very real, and it was recorded, and I got to listen to it again, so to remember it. But I saw some interesting things in that life. And
Gershon, when you came out, when you were fully conscious again, what did that do to you, having been at Yetziat Mitzrayim, the coming out of Egypt? What did that do to you?
What did it do to me? It was pretty cool.
No, for sure, it's cool. But what was the effect on you?
What was the effect on me? I was very, very pleased that I had experienced it. I thought it was. I wanted more.
Yes.
But I don't know that it made me more religious, and it was. I think it was necessary for me in my development to recognize the fact that I'm. If you know that you've had lives, other lives, you become less attached to this one, or less attached to the character that you're playing in this one. You kind of see yourself as the actor as opposed to the character. So like if I'm Tom Cruise, and like I've been in like 100 different movies, and I've been a spy, and I've been an athlete, and I've been a race car driver, and I've been a war veteran, or whatever it is that I've been. I've had all these different lives too. But at the end of the day, when they stop shooting, you go home and you're Tom Cruise again, or you go home and you're your essence, your consciousness, your soul, and then you re-up on your next character. And so when you can feel that, when you can see that, you become less invested in who you are right now, and think of yourself more as the guy behind the guy.
And much more of a universal, almost eternal figure, right?
I mean, if you believe that you're a soul, or that you have one and you identify one, I mean, soul. I don't know how a soul gets destroyed. It has no beginning. It has no end. It's a piece of God. If you start thinking of yourself that way, it really helps with fear. You don't freak out as much. Like during COVID, I was surrounded by people that were losing it, and I was strangely calm. Like I saw it for what it was. Like I was in alignment the entire time. Like fear was not an issue. I wasn't scared. Happens to be I got COVID anyway, and happens to be I haven't been able to smell or taste anything since. But it wasn't fearful. If you think of yourself as a soul, it's powerful that way, I think.
You know what fascinated me in your description and some stuff that I read prior to the interview is that the individual who's putting you under and taking you through this process will ask you questions as, okay, you're in a village, right? You're a member of that village. Let's say you're the one who carries water and you're sitting at a table with your family. What are you eating? What are your emotional experiences as your wife or your mother tells a story? Like you literally dig into the actual scenario that's I guess appearing in your mind's eye, right?
Yes. No comment. That's true. Yes.
Can you tell me another character of yours that you're another aspect of your soul that you've met?
This is going to sound strange, but I think, I don't know this for a fact, but I think, well, Dolores Cannon would confirm this in her books. But we get to be everything. We get to be humans. We get to be animals. We get to be water. We get to be a rock. I mean, if you're God and you want to experience physicality, then there's all kinds of different aspects of physicality of which to experience. So, rocks, grass, trees, animals, small animals, big animals, humans, up the chain, experiencing one of them. And I thought it was really weird at the time. I felt I was a bird.
Oh, wow.
I felt I was a large bird, like a big bird. And I was flying and I was soaring. And I visualized that I was above the ground. I was in the clouds. It was actually quite amazing. And I fast forwarded to the day of my death in that life, which is like standard practice in a past life regression. They move you forward to your last day. Yes. And I remember I was on a riverbank and I couldn't fly, and my wings were weighed down in the mud, and I couldn't get up. I couldn't get the mud off, and I was kind of stuck, and I kind of died there on the riverbank. And this is what memory came out, during a past life regression. So it's not just out of memories of, of what happened 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. It could have happened 10,000 years ago. Who knows? But it's, yeah. If you're inclined to get one, you should. It's a really spiritually eye-opening experience, a past life regression.
I just want to focus on for a moment. I'm really asking a similar question that I asked, but I'm trying to understand it, because I've never gone through this process, although I really want to now. Why does someone go through this? For what purpose? By discovering these other aspects of your soul, of who you were, what does it ultimately achieve for you?
I mean, more than one thing. One thing I mentioned is, you start thinking of yourself as the soul behind the character as opposed to being invested in your character. I mean, I think that's huge. When you start thinking of yourself as something greater than what you just see in the mirror. But you could have someone who has, fears that don't make any sense, fear of the dark, fear of water, and you have a past life regression, and you can realize that in a previous life you died in a ship going down and freezing to death in the water, and you drowned to death, or you died in a fire and you're afraid of fire, or you got bitten to death by dogs and you have a fear in this life of dogs. We carry in our DNA the memories of previous existences, and it comes out in a past life regression, and it can be helpful in explaining why we are the way we are. And if you can, and therapeutically, if you want to conjure up in meditation or in hypnosis that character that suffered that tragedy from the previous life that's bleeding into this one, and you set them free, you tell them it's okay, you tell them you're loved, you can go back to where you're going, there's no reason to panic anymore. And that's the way these quantum healing works, is you're working with the aspect of yourself that's still injured. You heal it, you release it, you give it a kiss, and then there's a shift where you are right now. It's a powerful healing technique, but that's possible. The knowledge from a past life regression could point you in the direction to actually do something about it. So there's a lot of great things out of doing this type of spiritual work or experiencing it.
Wow, there's a lot to unfold here. I think we might have to do a part 2 at some point. It's a lot. I remember we had our discussion at your around your table a few weeks ago, and we talked for like a couple of hours, and I just sat and listened, and I was mesmerized by what you told me, and even more so, I was mesmerized about the journey that you've gone on. I think it's fascinating that you've done this, and I say to you, kol hakavod, as we say in Hebrew, for having the courage and the gumption to really look at life differently and to look at your spirituality different. An awful lot of people do not do that, despite the fact that a lot of our people seem very unhappy with their mode of spirituality, and but are not willing to look beyond. So well done to you. Well done to you, Gershon.
Thank you.
You're
Listen,
welcome.
it's coming. It's coming. It's coming for you. It's coming for everybody. It's just natural evolution. If it happens in this life, if it happens in the next life, it's going to happen because we're all destined to go back to the place where we all came from. And that's, raising in consciousness, raising in vibration. And if you're not doing the work now, you will be. So when you're ready, you'll ripen and you'll do the work, and I might be a little bit early, but I'm no different than everybody else. We all have it. It's just a question of timing, Some of the apples ripen a little earlier than the others, but everyone's
Granted. Now, I've been playing around with AI for the last few months, and asking it to write a poem about my guests and then presenting it to them. And I've done this many times. Some people like it, some people don't. But indeed, I have a poem called Ode to Gershon Miskin, written by AI. Would you like to hear it?
By AI. Okay, yeah.
There we go. Gershon Miskin, Gary Miskin too. A redhead tall, his spirit grew. At 6'7", he stands with might, a businessman's mind, a heart, a light. A husband, a father of 7 so dear, each one cherished year after year. In his arms, love is deep, in his heart, memories to keep. One son, a prayer leader so bright, his voice lifts the soul in the synagogue light. A talent divine, words like a song, in the holy space where hearts belong. The older son, a sweet soul indeed, his kindness and warmth take the lead. The youngest, with innocence so pure, said, I want to marry mommy with love so sure. You can't afford her, the dad would say, with a smile as they laughed the day away. Life was filled with joy, humor, and grace. In the Miskin home, love found its place. From Yeshiva's hall to a life well lived, Gary sought balance, his spirit to give. In later years, he found a new way, a meditative path to guide his day. Spirituality, once learned with might, now grounded in stillness, in soft, in quiet light. A balance of mind, of soul, and heart. A journey of peace, a brand new start. That's it. What do you think?
Oh, it's awesome.
The best one was the story about your son. Your son, what was he when at 5? He said he wants to marry your wife, right?
Yeah.
And your response was, you can't afford her.
Yeah, he can't. He can't.
I love that. Gary, I want to thank you a lot for being here and for your openness and agreeing to express what you've gone through and to share it with others. I don't know if you see it this way, but I find it to be a very brave thing that you do. And I'm very excited about it. And I'm very grateful for you sharing it with us. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Avrum. God bless you all.
Amen. Let me ask you a question. Do people, if they want to learn more, are you open to being in touch with people?
I got to figure that out. I got a busy schedule. I got to reorganize some things before we can start taking on traffic.
Good way of saying it. All right. If people want to be in touch with Gary, I'll vet it. So you can email me at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com. But until then, folks, we want to thank you very much for listening and for being part of this. As I said at the top of this interview, the best thing you can do is to take out of this interview what works for you, what is clear, and what you may want to launch within your own life. Viktor Frankl, and I've quoted him so many times, he's a logotherapist, wrote one of the most prolific and popular books ever written called Man's Search for Meaning, said that the whole idea behind of being happy and being peaceful is to find purpose and meaning in life. And I think that's what we discovered here within Gershon's life. So take that out of this interview and apply it to your own life. because we are here for a short time, at least this aspect of our soul, and therefore make the best of it. Thank you so much for being with us. Until we meet again, as they say in Yiddish, sei gesund, which means go in health. And I look forward to talking with our next guest. Thank you so much.